Thank you, Ilias. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Also welcome from my side. I would like to provide you some information about another agency project, about the so-called IPA or IPA project. IPA is an abbreviation and it stands for Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance. In December 2019, ERA and the European Commission's Director General DG NEAR, which Ilias just mentioned, signed a 3-year contract covering 2020 to 2022, which allows my agency to continue its efforts supporting the beneficiaries of the Western Balkans and Turkey under the EU budget. Beneficiaries are the EU candidate and potential EU candidate countries which I have listed on this slide: Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, and Turkey. We have a smaller budget than the EuroMed Rail project. It's only 450,000 euros, but we are still struggling implementing it under the present-day pandemic conditions, because we cannot have study visits, we cannot have trainings in the region. It's unfortunately a bit of a difficult situation. I don't want to go too much into the detail of the project here, because the time is running quickly. However, I want to mention that we have indeed, as Mr. Rouse already mentioned, very fruitful cooperation established with a transport community based in Belgrade. The transport community is a relatively new international organization in the field of mobility and transport, consisting of 33 participants, the entire EU and the 6 Western Balkans regional partners. 1.5 years ago, ERA and the Transport Community Permanent Secretariat concluded administrative arrangement, which is the base for fruitful cooperation. Together, we are working on the integration of the Western Balkans transport markets into the EU by assisting the 6 Western Balkan partners to adopt and implement EU legislation in the field of transport. We are supporting projects that are connecting Western Balkan regional partners among themselves and with the EU. As I've already seen a question in the chat, it's not really under our competence because it's a market question, and our agency's work is more about interoperability and safety. But without taking the head of the European Commission on, I can of course say the long-term aim is to integrate all Western Balkan countries into the single European railway area, comprising market aspects, comprising safety aspects, comprising interoperability aspects in every respect. With these words, I would like to conclude, because we are behind time, and hand over to my dear colleague Natalia Skachenko, who will give you more details about her work as OSJD project manager. Thank you, Natalia. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will continue discovering the agency's contributions to enhancing connectivity with the neighboring countries and farther towards Asia. I am very pleased to introduce shortly the cooperation which we are conducting with the Organization for Cooperation Between Railways, OSJD. OSJD incorporates 29 member countries, and 9 of them are European Union member states. On this territory, there are about 300,000 kilometers of the railway network and 13 corridors for international railway transport. To support, improve, and further develop this network, OSJD is carrying out a large scope of activities at the levels of the ministries, but also railway companies. And these activities include, for example, transport law and a variety of strategic commercial, and technical aspects. This year marks the 65th anniversary of OSJD, and the agency's cooperation with that organization also has a long record, almost 15 years. We continue our cooperation despite the pandemics. The main cooperation channel is the ERA OSJD contact group, and its activity concerns technical and operational compatibility, including safety. Here we speak about compatibility of 1435 and 1520, 1524 millimeter gauge railway systems in the countries of EU and OSJD. Current circle of participants, as you can see on the slide, includes the OSJD committee, 11 countries of OSJD, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, Ukraine, and Estonia, as well as Commonwealth Railway Transport Council, CCGT, International Union of Railways, USC, and of course, ERA and DigiMove. We also cooperate in some other formats. For instance, the agency's experts are invited in the annual OSJD and USC seminars on implementation of technical specifications for interoperability of EU on telematics for freight and passenger transport. We also attend since last autumn as observer the meetings of OSJD Permanent Working Group on coding and telematics, taking into account some interfaces we have between TSI technical documents and joint documents of OSJD and USC. For example, we can also attend the conferences. Now let's discover in more detail the objectives of our cooperation. The basis is provided in the Memorandum of Understanding. The starting point back in 2007 was the recognition of existing high level of interoperability in the railway system of 1520, 1524 millimeter gauge within and outside the European Union. It is often called simply as 1520 system. For the purpose of developing interoperability at the European level, but also preserving and further developing existing links with third countries, it was necessary to better cover the 1520 system in the EU TSIs. So the first contacts allowed us to collect valuable inputs to prepare a feasibility study on approach to take TSI and convergence possibilities, and we continued more detailed analysis later on until now to compare more detailed requirements for the basic parameters. So, and we also have other possibilities to identify and discuss measures for preservation and improvement of existing technical and operational compatibility on the EU-CIS border. So, recently we started working under renewed memorandum from last year. The shared understanding of the importance of cooperation led to multiple renewals, and now we have an updated framework MOU, which not only offers us a longer cooperation horizon, but also enhances the previous objectives in order to cover and promote further relevant topics or measures for interoperability, safety, and seamless railway transport between Europe and Asia. This includes, of course, not only conventional gauge, but also high-speed, combined transport, and border crossing aspects. We will come back to it a bit in the following slides. So now, ladies and gentlemen, what are the key results so far in the OSJD contact group? The first priority has been allocated to comparative analysis of subsystem requirements. And as you can see on this slide, all subsystems were covered and we started some updates. It may be interesting for you to know that the finalized documents are available on the ERA and OSJD websites in English and Russian languages. And we believe that these documents can be of interest for any party which is analyzing requirements for that area and strives to promote interoperability further. In every meeting, we also have a possibility to exchange relevant information and practical experience, which is useful to coordinate measures for preservation and improvement of existing technical and operational compatibility, and seamless transport. We consider this is also an important part of our agenda, and experts from ERA and DG Move are systematically presenting the news in the European legislation, policies, and so on, and it is valuable for us also to learn corresponding news from OSJD area. Indeed, a wide range of topics has been covered, such as conformity assessment, standardization, safety approach, new authority functions of ERA, cross-border operation, staff requirements, implementation of some interoperable infrastructure projects, some innovative technologies, EU Green Deal, preventive measures in pandemics, and other. So now, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude with some insight into the future plans. It has been mentioned several times that international and transcontinental transport by rail is getting more and more importance. It is an important pillar supporting climate protection, recovery after pandemics, and sustainable growth. Building on existing strength, which we developed in the joint work, the updated MOU between ERA and OSJD helps to optimize and streamline our cooperation in a flexible way, so that today, in 2021, and later, we could continue considering relevant topics in the areas of mutual interests, keeping in mind this wider picture for railway transport and its development trends. The presented work streams remain important, and there is a possibility for other topics and cooperation forms. The contact group itself is not deciding on technical legislation. When relevant, our conclusions, discussions, analysis may lead to some expert recommendations to the relevant bodies. Specific activities are jointly decided on the annual basis in our work plans. We have heard about intensive agenda of international cooperation of DG Move and European Commission. So we are working in this format hand in hand with our colleagues from DG Move, and in the framework of the agency's mandates, we are of course striving to optimize the contributions versus objectives jointly defined and follow-up of the findings. We are also monitoring the developments in order to identify the areas where we could bring further added value in synergy with all of our initiatives in the international field in order to promote safe and seamless international railway transport and modal shift to rail. Thank you very much for your attention. May I now give back to my colleague Christoph, who is also responsible for the relations with OTIF, the Intergovernmental Organization for International Carriage by Rail.
Thank you, Natalia. I have prepared indeed a few slides about the work between the EU and OTIF. It was already mentioned, it is called the Intergovernmental Organization for International Carriage by Rail. The organization is based in Bern in Switzerland, and it has a very long tradition going back to the 1800s. It has presently 50 member states, and it is based on the OTIF convention, the so-called COTIF, with a number of appendices. OTIF's mission is to promote, improve, and facilitate international traffic by rail. This is exactly where the common point with the European Union is, which has the aim to create a single European railway area. Here, my agency is supporting the European Commission in order to streamline the technical rulemaking for rail of the European Union on the one hand side, and the OTIF legislative framework on the other side. With other words, the common mission is teamwork covering both technical and legal aspects. It is our common aim to establish and maintain equivalence between the European Union and the OTIF legislation concerning railway interoperability and safety to the extent necessary for international rail traffic. On this slide, you see a map generated by the OTIF Secretariat. You see the dark blue countries which apply the technical appendices to the COTIF, which I mentioned previously, the so-called ATMF and ATPU. So these are two annexes to the OTIF convention. Other OTIF member states surrounding the EU are also marked in the same dark blue color, and that means that they also apply these technical legislation, the technical legislation of OTIF, which is mostly equivalent to the rules applicable in the EU. This allows the exchange of vehicles at border stations among those countries with the same dark blue color. The table on this slide indicates the status of equivalence between the uniform technical prescriptions from OTIF and the technical specifications for interoperability applicable in the EU. It's a bit simplified, but it is correct. The technical interoperability rules of OTIF have the aim of facilitating the free circulation of vehicles in international traffic and have superseded the technical provisions of RIC and RIV vehicles, which you probably remember. They go back to the 1920s to 1922 to be precise, but they are today no longer available. Today you have the OTIF rules. On the one hand side, you notice that the rules, that all the rules related to freight wagons, they are fully compatible. But you see on the other side that the scope of the OTIF rules is not covering the full range, which is marked in this table. Why is this? Well, it is very simple, because OTIF only covers those aspects which are necessary to exchange vehicles at border stations. To give you an example, there is no need for rules about control, command, and signaling if you just want to send a freight wagon to Turkey or to Serbia. But if you want to achieve a single European railway area with trains or train sets going from country A to country B, for example, from France to Germany, the TGV, you need also rules about control, command, and signaling in order to allow also locomotives or full train sets to cross the border. This slide, you see two squares. The smaller one to the left is displaying the situation within the European Union. In the context of the EU legislation, we use the term vehicle authorization for placing on the market, while under COTIF, which is the situation in the big box covering almost the complete slide, the rules speak about admission of railway material used in international traffic. Remember from the map I showed you previously that all the EU member states which have railways are also members to COTIF. This is why you see the EU in the smaller box surrounded by the OTIF frame in the in a bigger scale. I mentioned already the Interoperability Directive 2016/797, which is the technical legal base for trains traveling across borders, including the TSIs. COTIF is only relevant for those EU member states which receive vehicles from outside the EU under the COTIF framework, for example, Turkey, as I mentioned it before, or if trains vehicles should be sent outside, like to North Macedonia, for example. Yeah, in this case, COTIF Appendix ATMF provides the legal basis for exchanging vehicles at border stations, as I mentioned it previously. After all, why is there the cooperation between the European Union and OTIF? Well, to say it or to summarize it in simple words, if you want to travel beyond the EU, if you want to make vehicles being exchanged at borders, we need the help of the OTIF legal framework in order to streamline the applicable rules. That's as simple. And with these words, I would like to hand back to our moderator, Thorsten. Are you there, Thorsten?
Yes, thank you very much, Christoph. We have comments in the chat, but we have another speaker coming, but there's a connection. People are asking, for example, what is the position of ERA concerning outside EU activities vis-à-vis the UIC activities? And we have somebody here from the UIC. We have the Director General from UIC. It's François Daven, and he will give us some information on UIC activities, which I guess they're celebrating 100 years soon. Is it so?
Yes, indeed. So thank you for giving me 5 minutes to speak a little bit about UIC. Well, very rapidly, I think everybody knows more or less who we are. We are since 1921, indeed, the Association of the Railways of the World. So since our very inception, we had most of the European networks, but also Asian one, and also some in the Middle East. So since inception, we were as global as railways can be, and now we have more than 200 railways all around the world. So that means that most of the countries and networks been referring to are members of UIC, for example, China Railways, most of the railways in the Maghreb areas are members of UIC, Turkey, TCDD is a member of UIC. So we really know, and we are here as an institution to try to provide connectivity and indeed technical documents that will make possible international traffic. So our raison d'être is relatively simple. It's open, share and connect, and I will perhaps emphasize a little bit about what does it mean for us. And in my short speech, I will perhaps insist on two main ideas. First one, as it was referred by European Commission and by Josef Doppelbauer, we need to change of paradigm to install rail as a backbone of mobility, and that's at quite a number of consequences. And the second idea is about complementarity, because we have seen the quite complicated landscape of railways, and we really need to work together, being really efficient, and to be sure that we are not entering into competition, because every one of us, we have our specific role, and we have to find a way to better work together. So first of all, change of paradigm. I think Josef and Keir said that very clearly. We need in the coming years, there is a sense of urgency to have a massive model shift to rail, because rail is basically for the next 10 years the less emitting mode of transport. So we need collectively to make it simple, to make it smart, to make it able to connect to all other mode of transport. And that is a collective I think work that we can enter together. And I think for that, it's very important to build a very high level of collaboration, and to know very precisely what is the role of everyone. And that's where I come to this question of complementarity. Since indeed in UIC we are providing technical documents for our members and for the collectivity of railways. Some of them are highly technical. For example, UIC is providing the GSMR framework for the telecom part of ERTMS in Europe and outside Europe, because GSMR is a global product. For example, the Chinese trains that are implementing some kind of ERTMS-like control command system are using GSMR. We are preparing the next generation, which is called FRMCS, which is 5G with ETSI and 3GPP. So that's a global process. That's a highly technical process. We are also providing some solution for ticketing, for freight platform, for practical means for exchanging wagons. So I will not make the whole story. I will not have time for that. We have issued recently a document which is called technical solutions for the operational railways, that give some kind of highlight of what we are doing. That's a 30 pages document that you will be able to find on our website, and that explains all those technical solutions. But I think what is important to highlight here is that those technical solutions are made to be compatible with EU frameworks. There is cross references. There are also even some annexes of some TSIs that are, as a matter of fact, UIC material. We have agreement with the European Railway Agency for them to use and to embed into their technical specification of interoperability documents that are made within UIC. And why is it so? Is because we have to handle together a quite complex system. So for managing this system, we need to be sure that indeed at the operators level, because UIC is an association of operators where we are undertaking an infrastructure manager, we are taking our part of the burden. We are defining operational solutions that are indeed efficient and able to deliver the level of performance we all agree, and that those technical specifications, those technical documents are compatible, are articulated with the regulation. So that's what we are doing day to day with the ERA, with which we have excellent relation with, also with the European Commission. We are also doing that internationally. So, for example, we are working with the African Union to discuss what kind of operational standards they could use, because we have quite a lot of members in Africa. We are doing that with our relation with OSJD. We have also MOU with OSJD, and we are trying, as you said, to make things compatible. Let's take a funny example. Last week, I gave to our Afghan colleagues a code for a station at the border between Afghanistan and Iran. So that's one of the role of UIC. We are still allocating some codes for indeed the related to IT systems for operating railways. So I would like to conclude with these three words that I began with, open, share and connect. That's what we are doing, and we are trying to do that in very close collaboration with the different regulatory frameworks to be sure that indeed this knowledge, this know-how that is embedded within UIC due to our members, because our members are participating and giving this expertise to have solutions that are actually fit for operations, and to be sure that at the end of the day, everything is perfectly compatible and all interfaces have been seen. And I hope that this collaboration will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, François. That was a very good insight on the UIC activities. I know it's very short, so we don't go very deep into details. I would like to go back to the ERA colleagues now, and Peter from our team of the national affairs. He knows much more than what we said before. Could you give maybe us a very, very short overview and quick insight? Peter, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I hope you might see also my presentation. Okay, many thanks, Thorsten. And I will shortly also reflect, let's say, what François told us about, let's say, regulatory frameworks. We are working with regulatory frameworks. So the agency is contributing and supporting, let's say, to set up harmonized regulatory frameworks. So at first, let's say, good afternoon to everybody. So Thorsten presented myself. I'm a team leader and leader of a service in international relations. And the projects which you have already seen are part of the service. So the fourth railway package established, let's say in 2016, allocated in its Article 43 of the agency regulation, the task to ERA to provide assistance to member states, candidate countries and stakeholders, but also in regard of Article 44 on international relations of the to keep up with scientific and technical developments. And this is, let's say, the goal, to know not only what's going on in Europe, but also outside, to promote best solutions, let's say, to our partners inside and outside of Europe. And this includes the promotion of the Union Railways legislations and standards, as, let's say, many parties also outside of Europe would like to see what is going on in Europe and to have, let's say, also success in railways and increase of transport, as we could see before the COVID crisis in Europe regarding railway transport, especially of passengers, but also we could see even after COVID, let's say, in the freight sector. So in this scope, let's say the IPA and EuMEDRAIL projects are quite important as we directly gave ERA the possibility to support exchange of experience promotion and as fast as the implementation of Union Railways legislation and standards in the western and southern neighborhood of Europe. I'm very glad to count, let's say, in this regard with the support of my respective colleagues working, let's say, hard to make it happen that this regulation appears. So, what is now the fact? The European Union is the center, more or less, of railways, and we are working, as you have seen, let's say, closely together with OTIF, as, let's say, since the beginning of the agency, we had to see how to avoid that there will be, for the member states of the Union, which are mostly also all part of OTIF, that there will be two different set of regulations. So, with, let's say, also to the establishment of an administrative arrangement with OTIF, and we got, let's say, more or less a solution, which means that mostly all of the TSIs which will be introduced in Europe will be applied by OTIF as UTP, as my colleague Christoph showed. So as you see, let's say OTIF has 51 member states, and there are a lot of European ones, which is, let's say, in the middle. In addition to that, of course, let's say when the agency started to define, let's say, TSIs, we have to think also about, let's say, the 15-20 millimeter system, and this is mostly existing in the area of OSJD. So OSJD, as my colleague Natalia informed, has 29 states, and of course here we are also, let's say, 7 states which are common, let's say, for OTIF and OSJD. So, and we have, let's say, in addition, of course, also some which are even part of the European Union. We are 9, so you see a series, let's say, of overlapping things which we need to consider, and where we also have the possibilities to promote common regulations. Because if you want to have a train run, let's say from Kazakhstan to, let's say, the port of Hamburg or beyond, okay, you have to ensure that it fits, let's say, to the technical railway system which we might use between, let's say, these two places. In addition to that, and this is, let's say, another part, the agency is working even beyond the area of OTIF and OSJD. So we have, let's say, set up in 2016 a platform of rail regulatory bodies, as we got expression of interest, let's say, from different parties outside of the European Union. And this platform includes, for example, also, let's say, India Railways, let's say, ONRSR, which is regulator of Australia. We have, let's say, the Directorate of Railways of the Gulf Corporation. We have the Brazilians, and we have, let's say, that is a quite important part, also, let's say, the United States, because I have noted in the chat there was a question, what about United States? So, in addition to that, and to shorten it, the European Union has an institution which is, let's say, Shift to Rail. I think, let's say, most of our experts know what it is. It is a joint undertaking, let's say, for research, and it's developing, let's say, solutions which are quite interesting also, let's say, for partners in and outside of Europe. And so we got questions, and we are happy, let's say, that our friends from Shift to Rail will support us to promote, let's say, these ideas also, let's say, outside of Europe. In addition to that, the Union Agency for Railways is working also, let's say, with other organizations. Here we might mention, let's say, UNECE, which has also, let's say, a regulatory task. So we are supporting them in the scope, let's say, what the Commission, let's say, allows us or defines us to do. We are working also together with others. We have, let's say, a series of European recognized bodies. I only mentioned, let's say, due to this small part which I had available on my slide, some of them, and I'm very happy, let's say, to count with their support to promote this regulation and experiences also outside of the Union. Outside of the Union, we are also, let's say, faced with, let's say, other international organizations, just to mention, let's say in the Asian region, for example, UNSCAP, but we can see also in the Middle East, for example, UNESCRA. We are working together from time to time also, let's say, with UFM, which is mainly, let's say, the Union for Mediterraneans. And of course, let's say we are count to share experiences with others, like, for example, and thanks, Francois, to share, let's say, experiences also in the scope of railways with us. So there are, let's say, some abbreviations like World Bank or African Bank for Development or EIM or EIB or, EIB and EBRD, which are looking also to the agency to know what we might provide, because let's say some of the projects which we would like to establish are related to railway safety and interoperability, or they might ask us, can you perhaps help us to establish contacts, to share experience, or can we perhaps also provide them with experience how to set up harmonized regulation or institutions which will facilitate the transport, railway transport in a certain country. So in that regard, also to get the activities in a structured way, the agency set up since, let's say, years, memorandum of understandings. I mentioned only just some of them. Mainly, of course, let's say of interest is the administrative arrangement with our friends, let's say from OTIF, we established and renewed also, let's say, the memorandum of understanding with OSJD. We have a memorandum of understanding with the United States, with Brazil, with the Gulf, and of course, also mentioned by Mr. Rouse, we established a memorandum of understanding with the transport community of the Western Balkans. So, as we are short of time, why we are doing this? Because, let's say, to share best practices will not only, let's say, help others, it will help also Europe to have, let's say, solutions in place, a regulatory way also, which will facilitate the transport of railway transport via railways. So some of the topics which we can mention here is, of course, let's say, the multimodal transport. So this is also in the scope of common challenges to provide, let's say, a continuous transport chain where, let's say, railway needs to be, let's say, in the middle, but we can connect with that, let's say, ships via railways, let's say, to inland areas where, let's say, perhaps the last mile will be handled by other solutions like a lorry or others. So this is also due, let's say, to the common challenges which we are facing. Mr. Rouse also, to close, let's say, more or less the meeting, mentioned mainly, let's say, Green Deal. Yes, Green Deal is also some of the topics, and reduction of carbon dioxide, which we are promoting, which we are, let's say, facing together with others, which will also encourage others to say, okay, agency, can you help us? Can you inform us how we might do something? Yes, and this mainly, let's say, helps us also to establish context and to help, let's say, them and Europe to have, let's say, a better and modern railway system. With that, I would like to thank everybody just for their interest, and I kindly would like to invite you to use, let's say, the opportunity of this meeting to send us, to use the chat functionality, or to use, let's say, the agency website, and to send us, let's say, via the contact form, your question. So, and with that, I will give, let's say, my the speech back to Thorsten. Hi, Thorsten.
Thank you very much, Peter. I didn't have the micro yet. Yeah, thank you very much. We have a few questions. As you said, please keep on sending them. We will answer them. We will promise you to answer them. So you can send them via the chat. You can send them also via our website. Maybe one question for Keir that could be interesting, that many people were interested in. If Europe could make a cooperation with the US government concerning the jobs initiative the US is currently doing with our initiative in Green Deal, etc. Is there a cooperation planned or ongoing?
Well, I think ongoing, no, because as you all know, I don't think it's the kind of thing we could have cooperated with the previous US administration about. In terms of what we do for the future, I mean, as I mentioned in my piece earlier, we are very much cooperating with the FRA, the US Federal Railroad Administration, and in fact we have a further meeting with them next week. And I think in the course of those discussions we will certainly be looking at areas where we can deepen cooperation with them. I think there are a number of technological areas where there now may be considerable benefit in Europe and the US working together. I mean, I think I should say, and Philippe Citroën, who asked the question, knows this very well, the US does have a very strong Buy America policy, and indeed, unfortunately, from our point of view, it's one which President Biden seems inclined to further strengthen. And that does mean it is very difficult for European manufacturers to manufacture product in Europe and sell it to the US, at least for any federally funded projects. Now, of course, many of the European suppliers have subsidiaries in the US, partly to avoid that issue. But I mean, that is something which I think will limit the ability for us to cooperate and actually expect to see an exchange of railway products as a result of it. But certainly in terms of developing specifications, in terms of developing new standards for the future, maybe in terms of developing things which we can then use as a basis to create common standards for the rest of the world. I think there's a lot of possibility now to do things there. But clearly we will have the discussions, and no doubt in a few weeks' time we can tell you more on that front. Thanks, Thorsten.
Thank you, Keir. So we have some light there, what's going on. Another question, totally different topic. Does ERA support calls by CER and UNIFE in an open letter to the presidents of the EU to extend the European Year of Rail in light of the COVID crisis? We all know that there were many things planned and now it's going to be difficult to do all what we wanted. And is there something planned? Josef, maybe you can answer on this.
Well, the European Year of Rail is a very important signal. It is a signal to the whole world that railways are important, that railways have a very strong contribution to the objectives of the Green Deal. As because of COVID, many of the planned events cannot take place in 2021. I fully agree with extending the approach and the label of European Year of Rail to 2021. That would, by the way, also apply for some events that ERA has to postpone from 2021 to 2022. By the way, I personally have always been of the opinion that we should have called for a decade of rail and not for just one single year of rail. So going from 1 to 2 is just bringing us closer to the vision of having 10 years of rail.
Thank you, Josef. I see many questions asking for cooperation with China, with India. I don't know if you can answer all this now, and also technical questions as if there is cooperation on Russian and Chinese train information systems in the EU. I think we should leave it here now. There's many interesting questions and we will try to answer them later on in writing to you. We promise that you get an answer because I think it should be possible from the numbers of questions I see. There's some work for us, but we will be able to answer you. So if you have more questions now, keep on sending them. We will finish this seminar now. We thank you for your participation and we will hope to see you soon in the next seminar. Will be held on the 20th of May. And it's called the key role of rail freight to achieve our climate goals. So we will happy to receive also your feedback on this webinar. And this you can do also on our website where you registered for this webinar. Again, I thank you for participation. To all of you, I wish you a very pleasant afternoon and take care. Bye. See you soon next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Bye.